Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Hope everyone had a good 4th of July weekend. I know ExxonMobil did. They're going to celebrate what's looking like their most profitable quarter ever. In fact, their second quarter profits are going to double their first quarter profits. So what's not to be thrilled about? And look, they got Joe Biden to blame for it. Because we're stupid. We're buying it. Everybody I talked to, Joe Biden's fault. Now prices falling a little bit in our area. They did drop the gas tax a little bit, which I think is a dumb idea, but got to look like you're doing something. A couple of pennies coming down. Nobody's saying, hey, look what Joe Biden did. But there you go. So good today. The president was in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, giving a really fantastic speech, I thought, where Democrats need to live. Where Biden was today on the spiel, where Democrats need to find. That's the wheelhouse where he was at. Talking about work, talking about jobs, talking about union jobs, talking about government encouraging workers to join and form unions, talking about when unions do well, everyone does well. We've got a strong, vibrant labor movement. That means that, we have a growing, prosperous working class, and then that illusionary middle class we love to talk about. That gets to grow too, so we get to pretend like, we're better than just working people. Yeah, that's where they need to spend a lot of time. And he spent time talking about what kind of an economy he wants to move us back towards. Kind of the thing that he grew up in. A little nostalgic for when he was a younger man. Dignity. He talked about dignity on the job. Again, you don't hear many Democrats talking like that these days. And finally hitting after Rick Scott and the plan to basically just wipe out Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, wipe out every government program. Because, hey, our Senate is so functional that every 5 years, they're going to reauthorize Social Security every 5 years, right? You feel comfortable with that? It's about time that they went after the Rick Scott plan, went after the words that Republicans have been saying, because we're in a moment, folks, where maybe, I'm gonna put a big maybe there. Maybe people are going to listen to what the Republicans are actually saying now that the dog did catch the car. They've been saying for years they're going to overturn Roe. They've been saying for years they're going to criminalize abortion. They want to lock women up. They've been saying this stuff. Been saying this for years. They've been, the lockup part a little quieter, but it's been there. And now people, I hope, saying maybe when they say something, we should. I don't know. Maybe listen. Maybe listen to them when they say, yes, we're going to destroy Social Security. Yes, we're going to destroy Medicare. Yes, we're going to take that Medicaid away. Yes, we're going to shatter what's left of the social contract. We're going to rip up and shred the social safety net. Yes, we're going to do all that stuff. It really is going to be, you are on your own. And the president was in Cleveland today talking about what I think is one of his good accomplishments. One of his great accomplishments, and that's the American Rescue Plan. And out of that, the Butch-Lewis Act. For those who don't know, the Butch-Lewis Act was a very small piece of the American Rescue Plan that was going to help a couple million retiree workers whose pensions were about ready to be just eviscerated for a bunch of reasons. Some of it just having to do with, hey, Wall Street screwed them. Some of it have to do with industries that have just gone away. Some of it has gone, a lot of it has been the deunionization that's gone on in this country. But the multi-employer pension funds that had been struggling now going to get an infusion of cash to be able to keep them afloat, to keep these retirees so that they can have dignity into their retiring years. And that's an important word, I think, for working people. Dignity, something maybe we should reclaim, something maybe we should think about, maybe we should talk about. Because we're hearing it from a lot of people who are organizing unions right now. Yeah, it's about wages, it's about hours, it's about conditions, about all that stuff. Yeah. But it's about dignity, it's about respect. It's about power. And this is where the Democratic Party better get their heads out of their keisters, and the labor movement had better start talking the talk again. Had better get out of their ways and harness this power of people wanting that dignity and demanding that respect and demanding that power. And good on Biden today for hammering on that. It's important. And talking about the things that his generation, him growing up, and look, I remember my grandparents having the same kind of conversations. I remember, as a kid, you have money worries, and he talked about, do you have enough money to pay for the things you need? Not for what you want, for what you need. And how do you make sure that you have an economy that does that? I mean, we don't talk enough about this. And, I look at the world that we're in, and the weekend we just had. Wow. And a lot of people, opining about why we have all of these shootings and why we have all of this upheaval and why all of this division and this hatred and all this. And for me, it comes back to the simple stuff. It comes back to greed. It comes back to 40 plus years of supply side voodoo Reaganomics. Hooray for me and the heck with everyone else. The ones who dies with the most toys wins. Gordon Gekko's greed is good. For me, that's the central part of all this. Now, I know the crazy right-wingers, no, it's abortion. No, it's this. No, it's that social compact has been just crushed with hooray for me and the heck with everyone else. I want mine. And this is where we end up in a situation where you don't care about anybody else. And we've raised a generation of kids who it's all about the self. It's all about go get yours. And don't think about your neighbor. Don't think about your community. Don't think about being part of this country. And then whenever anything does happen, well, it's yours. And if someone else wants theirs, well, they're stealing from you. Now you got to take it back. And it's this kind of mentality that I think has put us in this position. And Biden was talking a little bit today about, hey, how do we rebuild an economy that works for everybody? How do we ensure that work is rewarded, that we reshore manufacturing and that those jobs create, the prosperity across communities? I mean, it was one of the better speeches he's given because it was Joe Biden being Joe Biden. It was him just connecting with his people, and his handlers need to get him out doing more of that, because that's the message. That's what's winning, not the divisive stuff, not the stuff that rips us apart, but how do we move forward together? How do we get that dignity and respect? How do we ensure that our kids get the things that they need? This is the moment. Now, why he was there in Ohio talking about the Butch-Lewis Act, and it's the final stage of finalizing all of the money in the process of getting these pensions restored, because some of the people saw their pensions being cut almost 70% in retirement. And you go, you spend your entire life working, and this is part of that dignity and respect. You spend your entire life working, deferring compensation, deferring wages, giving things up, going, you know what, I'm going to retire, I'm going to have security, I'm going to be able to play with the grandkids, I'm going to be able to do what I want, go golf or do whatever. And then when you're in the middle of your retirement, they go, oh, sorry, we're broke. The economy in 2008 took a major nosedive. The industry that you were in, they went belly up. The companies didn't make contributions for a couple of decades. And now you, the individual, you and your family, you and your spouse, you and your grandkids, you are going to have to bear the burden. And this is where Biden really, I think, connected. That's wrong. And this is where we as a society have to say, that's wrong. We bail out these huge multinational corporations all the time. Every time a bank gets into trouble, what happens? In comes the Commerce Department, with the Treasury with the checkbook. But when working people get into trouble, well, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Tighten the belt a little bit. And again, this is another one of those moments for all those working people out there who go, oh, the Republicans are, they're the party of the working class. This Butch-Lewis Act has been being talked about in its form that got passed since 2017. But understand, this issue has been going on since 2009 when Bob Casey was championing it. I remember, following him around for a couple of weeks as he was stumping on this. Because this was one of those issues that me, as someone in a multi-employer pension fund, said, hey, this is kind of important that we make sure that those are secure with the same kind of safety net underneath it that at least other pensions get, as minimal as they are. Now, I'm a believer in every pension should be secured. If we're going to secure the Wall Street crowd, we should secure the Main Street crowd first. But no Republican got on board with this. This was going on all during the Trump years. And there had been talk that Trump may have signed it. Didn't push for it. No Republicans wanted it. No Republicans were willing to move forward on it. And nothing. Lip service, lots of that. We got lots of that out of the Republicans and out of Donald Trump. Infrastructure week, every week, no infrastructure. What did you get out of Biden? Well, we got a $1 trillion infrastructure plan that's going to put people to work. It's going to rebuild our infrastructure with that resource. Things being done. Now, look, inflation, bad everywhere. Not just here, globally. This is not a Biden problem. This is a global problem. This is a pandemic problem. This is a we let the smart people run the economy for far too freaking long problem. This is a problem of we let the business schools, who are the really smart folks, rig the economy for themselves and using working people as just tools. But Biden's trying to do some different things. And this is where I would say to working people, there is somebody in the White House who cares about you, cares about your family, cares about your work, cares about your communities. I can't say that about the last guy. And I looked at this speech today, and I highly suggest people take a look at it because it was good. I mean, he was spot on. Talked about Mitch McConnell holding the country hostage because, hey, sorry, we can't get the CHIPS bill passed because McConnell doesn't want to negotiate for prescription drug prices. And it's what Republicans have done masterfully for years. Even though they have no power, they gum up the system to where nothing for the working class can ever be done. And Mitch McConnell says that, well, there's a labor shortage going on. And the way you deal with a labor shortage, his quote was, you've got a whole lot of people sitting on the sidelines. He goes, frankly, they're flush for the moment. What we've got to hope is that once they run out of money, they'll start concluding it's better to go to work than not to work. So basically the $1,400 that Biden gave him, I guess McConnell claims they're still flush with from a year and a half ago. I don't know what world McConnell lives in. I know his wife's married to. I know he's married to a Chinese shipping magnate's daughter. So I know he's not hurting for cash. But $1,400 doesn't go as far as Mitch McConnell thinks. And this idea that working people are flush with cash, ridiculous. Still going on the frame of, we gave those unemployed $600 extra a week for those 3 months. They still must have some of it in the mattress. Where exactly does McConnell live? Oh, yeah, in a mansion. He knows nothing about what the average working people go through. But this is the talking point, to divide us. Oh, they won't take those crummy minimum wage jobs because, they're not desperate enough. And that's what they want. They want desperate people. They want you, me, our fellow workers to be desperate at every turn. Why? So they can keep paying crappy wages, terrible benefits. Question is, going to put up with it. That's why this election cycle, this coming election, really kind of very important. Really important. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break, right back on the other side. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some interesting polling data out from the young folk. The Mammoth poll just out. 18 to 34-year-olds have Biden an approval rating of 28%. Not great. A disapproval rating of 63%. Not great at all. But when asked the question, would you rather see Democrats or Republicans control Congress, that's where it gets interesting. 59% would prefer Democrats. 34% would prefer Republicans. So this idea that there's a red wave coming, I don't know. Not quite so sure, especially now in the post-Roe era. The latest polling coming out now sees a massive shift. I pointed out what was going on with Mammoth, but you look at when they asked a couple other questions about, since the Supreme Court overturned Roe, how are you looking at things? There has been a major shift in the polling. The Marist poll, the Mammoth poll, the Yahoo YouGov poll, Politico, all of them have shown between 3 and 5%, with the Marist poll 10%. Shift towards Democrats. So when the dog caught the car, they may have given away the red wave. And as Trump is about to announce what he's going to do, he could throw even more of a fly into the ointment there. Going to be an interesting election season, because you ask anybody, nobody's happy with what's going on, but the Republicans aren't giving anything of any real substance to go on. And you look at what just happened over the 4th of July weekend. I mean, the shooting in Illinois, Philadelphia. You can't even go to a freaking 4th of July celebration without worrying about somebody, some lunatic with a gun. Who got it legally, by the way. And a lot of the stories that I was reading, they made it sound like, the shooter in Illinois could have been stopped. Well, there was all these things, there was all these signs. There is no mechanism for that. It's the reason that we keep trying to pass laws and Republicans keep stopping them. We've had, what was it, 309 mass shootings this year already? And, as I was thinking about it over the weekend, I'm going, what could be more American? Over my last couple of days, I'm going, yeah, here it is. This is sadly who we are. And I'm tired of the speeches. I'm tired of enough is enough. I'm tired of, we got to do more. I'm tired of it. Clearly, this is what we want. I'm tired of hearing the stories of the heartbreaking story of the child in Illinois whose both parents were murdered. And tired of it. Until we're ready to act, until we're ready to do something. Now look, the president, gonna sign something. We're gonna get something. Is it gonna stop this stuff? I hope. But for me, it comes back down to just more than just the gun issue. It comes back down to the societal issue. When you have a religion that is about fear and anger and hatred, when your political leaders are some of the most fire-breathing bomb throwers, I don't see hope. And this is one of those conversations I had this weekend. I'm going, with one of the people that I share, thoughts with. I'm like, there are times when you just get tired and you just want to drop out. You just want to go, you know what? I'm done. I can't take it anymore. I just want to go find a, something and dig a ditch. And they're like, no, you can't. That's what they want. And now is not the time to turn away. Now is not the time to throw up our hands in disgust or despair. Now is the time to get more active, to get angrier. And I don't know how much more angry I can get at the fact that we're not doing enough to protect ourselves from these situations. And you go, well, what would you do? Well, you start with rethinking virtually everything we do. Conservatism has been a failed experiment. The Reagan Revolution brought us this. This is what greed, this is what hooray for me and the heck with everyone else. This is what it brought us. When the individual is sacrosanct, when it's just all about me. This is where the problem is. At least that's my thought. Love to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, Joe Walsh, former Illinois congressman, is going to be here to share some of his thoughts on the weekend that was. Also, maybe get some of his thoughts on the subpoenas that went out and maybe some of the testimony you're going to come up with the January 6th committee. Quick break. Right back with Joe Walsh. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1988. That was the day 167 oil workers were killed in the Piper Alpha oil rig explosion in the North Sea. It is considered the world's deadliest oil rig accident ever. Around 10 p.m., the platform essentially turned into a fireball so massive, rescue helicopters could not get near it. Gas lines ruptured when the night crew accidentally activated a gas pump down for repairs. Immediately, the platform was rocked with explosions, first wiping out the control room, then engulfing it in flames. The platform split into two. Its oil derrick toppled. Most were killed instantly, as the crew's quarters were directly above the gas compression module. Toxic fumes overcame others. Some jumped 100 feet into the sea. The platform was completely destroyed. It took 3 weeks to bring the fire under control. Occidental Petroleum later admitted the rig's design was fundamentally flawed, but many considered the explosion nothing short of industrial murder. The rig was notorious for fatalities and near misses. Jack Malloy, head of the offshore trade union OILC, recalled Piper was synonymous with accidents. People would say, "Piper? Oh, you don't want to go there. That place is ready to go." Conditions were so bad, the union pulled its reps off the safety committee. The next day, 115 oil workers in Humberside walked off the job, demanding better health and safety conditions. Subsequent investigations determined Occidental failed to enforce basic maintenance and safety procedures. Over 100 safety improvements were recommended. Occidental paid out $100 million to the families, but escaped prosecution. Today, there is a memorial chapel at the Kirk of St. Nicholas and a memorial sculpture in the Rose Garden of Hazelhead Park, both in Aberdeen, Scotland.
It's a serious handicap for an elected leader to be a lame duck. Far worse, though, if the leader is just plain lame. Poor Joe Biden has tumbled into both ditches. He set himself up for lame duckism in the 2020 race by promising voters that he would merely be, quote, a bridge, not anything else. He portrayed himself as a bipartisan inside player, an interim senior statesman who would calmly pilot the ship of state from Trump's bombast to whomever was next. But just a year and a half into his presidency, the duckism has kicked in, and he's scrambling to insist that he's still the president, now planning to run again in 2024. But that only highlights Biden's inherent lameness. He's playing president rather than being one. Take his embarrassingly meek response to the Supreme Court's 6 partisan extremists who just nullified the fundamental freedom of all women in America to control their own bodies. Biden called the court's dictate terrible. But what did he do? His first, quote, action was to send out a fundraising mailing asking for $15 donations to re-elect Democrats. Then he flew off on a 4-day trip abroad. Roundly condemned for being AWOL, he belatedly held a press conference in Spain, calling the court's attack on women, quote, destabilizing. Gosh, Joe, so harsh. Then he called on Congress to do something. But wait, aren't you the president? Shouldn't you at least be here, show up on the front lines, and treat this as the democracy emergency it is? Hello, 6 besotted judicial right-wingers who think their black robes make them little gods have just sanctimoniously usurped an innate human right. This is Jim Hightower saying, the 70% of Americans who oppose the ungodly arrogance of these 6 judges need a real president, one who will fight like hell to restore this right. And the question they have is, where is Joe?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I guess 4th of July weekend, very American. I guess this is the new thing. They're saying, according to CBS News, at least 220 people were killed and 570 wounded. So I guess that's is that where we're going? Is that the 4th of July that we want every year? I mean, 220 people killed, 507. I'll tell you, just wow, tiring. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the weekend that was and maybe what we do about it. I've asked our good friend Joe Walsh, former Illinois Congressman, 2020 Republican presidential candidate, and host of White Flag with Joe Walsh podcast. Joe, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, my brother, always good to be with you, man.
So I'm looking at these numbers, and I got to tell you, heartbreaking, angering, and as I said in the last segment, it's one of those things that makes me want to just go into a hole and just shield myself off from reality.
Don't. Look, you and I have talked about this issue of guns before. I am a big gun guy. I'm from my cold, dead hands kind of a gun rights advocate. Ted Cruz is a jerk. And I remember after Uvalde, Ted Cruz was asked by some reporter, how come this is a uniquely American problem? All of these shootings and killings by guns. And of course, Cruz avoided the question. Look, I'm a big gun guy. I'll answer. We have a hell of a lot of guns. What makes America different? We have a crap load of guns in this country, and we have a big gun culture. That's just the fact, Rick. Now, I don't think that's going to change at all. So the question is, what do we do about this?
So what do we do about it? I mean, look, I look at, I look at the kid who did the shooting, and I go, I don't know that this is a person I want having guns, let alone access to numerous guns, and
No, and Rick, you're right. He shouldn't have. And this should be the one place where all of us on the right and the left come together and say, do whatever we can to make sure that a guy who shouldn't get a gun doesn't get a gun. So do whatever we can before a gun is bought. That should be our focus. You look at this guy on July 4th in Highland Park, Illinois. I mean, there were laws on Illinois is my home state, Rick. Very strict gun law state. They've got universal background check. They've got a red flag law. The red flag law was not enforced. This guy shouldn't have gotten a gun. Cops came to his house in 2019, in September of 2019, because he threatened to kill everybody. What did the cops do? They took away all the knives he had, and he had a sword. He didn't have guns at the time. But that incident was not sent to the Illinois State Police. This guy's a threat. And you know why that's a problem, Rick? Because 2 months later, he applied to get his firearms owner identification card in Illinois that his father co-signed for. He never should have gotten that FOID card because that incident should have come up. So the laws on the books in Illinois were not enforced. That's a problem.
And now, do we go after the father as well? I mean, at some point, there's got to be accountability in all of this.
Agreed. I don't know what I got to watch my language. What
Please.
in God's name was up with this guy's old man? Again, there were red flags everywhere. Cops came to their house twice. The guy showed videos of himself killing people. He painted something on the side of his house that he lived in with his dad of a guy shooting people, and yet the father still signed the FOID card to allow this kid to get a gun. Yeah, the old man should be held accountable.
How much? I look at this, and again, there were guns around when I was a kid, and like I said, I've lived in two very different worlds when it comes to guns. I grew up in a housing project where if you saw somebody walking down the street with a gun, run, because somebody was going to die. And I would argue that person probably was going to deserve it because there was some kind of conflict. There was something interpersonal. They weren't just going to shoot up a room full of people for no reason. This is a foreign concept to me. I now live in a neighborhood where if you see somebody with a gun, they're probably going to the free gun range, just a mile from my house, or hunting or something else. So I understand the differences in the cultures. I understand the differences of the uses. But this, I'm going to go and I'm going to shoot into a crowd randomly. I'm going to go cause chaos. This is something I don't worse in my view.
And Rick, this is something new as of the last 20 years, these mass shootings. So something has changed. We have always had a hell of a lot more guns than the rest of the world, but we have not had this problem. We have not had this mass shooting problem really since the last 20 to 30 years. So it does have to do with our culture. It does have to do with mental health. It does have to do with communities and families and law enforcement not looking out for each other. No doubt about it. But Rick, it also has to do with the fact that, and I say this as a big gun guy, who doesn't want to ban any firearms, because let's remind everybody, 99.9% of all gun owners in this country are responsible gun owners, but we do a lousy job in this country of making sure somebody who shouldn't get a gun doesn't get one. So we need to make our background check process better, and we need to enforce these red flag laws.
Yeah, and I think you need to hold people more accountable when things do happen.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Joe Walsh, former Illinois congressman and host of the White Flag with Joe Walsh podcast. Make sure you check that podcast out. We'll get links out on social media. How much do you think this?
And by the way, Rick, on that point, the point you just made, holding people accountable when they commit a crime with a gun, we do a crappy job of that in this country. Again, I come from outside Chicago, any major city in this country, right? Those gangbangers on the south side of Chicago, those are not responsible gun owners. They didn't purchase those guns legally. They commit crimes with those guns, and oftentimes they're right back out on the street in a few days, and oftentimes they never get caught to begin with.
No, I don't disagree. But the question is, how'd they get the guns and where those guns come from and who's been tracking them? And all kinds of questions then come up with that. Because I know people who go, oh, well, I must have lost my gun or someone stole my gun. How do you lose your whole nother question? How much of this then do you think comes back to our politicians? Because I want to get to this Eric Greitens, who evidently has a new gun ad out. Which I think is just childish. It's ridiculous. I don't think it has anywhere in political discourse to be. But hey, this is where he is staking his ground. Have you seen this one?
Yeah.
How much of this plays into this kind of I don't know, this kind of mentality that we're at war, this war mentality against people you disagree with, so that we're dehumanizing each other on different sides to where it's okay to go shoot into a crowd.
So I'm no longer a Republican, and I've said often that the base of my former political party is fully radicalized. They no longer believe in truth. They've given up on democracy. They want a strong man to rule them, and they want their political enemies destroyed and or killed. This is a real dangerous problem on the right. And Fox News and people like Tucker Carlson feed it. And these politicians running for office, pictures of themselves shooting people with guns, that feeds it as well.
No, I mean, it doesn't say anything about what he wants to do to make the country better. It doesn't say anything about policy. And I guess it just shows that they're devoid of any policy. And what it really is it's all just show. It's all just projection. It just.
Yeah. And because I come from the Republican base, Rick, and I still talk to these voters all the time, it's really never been about policy since Trump. They just want somebody who will fight the people they don't like. So now you're seeing Greitens and some of these other candidates. And look, why is DeSantis so popular? Because he's a jerk and he fights. Yeah. That's what they want.
No, I've said that for years. Democrats, the line I've used for years is, in a street fight, Democrats will offer to hold your coat. And that's been a problem. And they better figure out how to ball up their little digits and get in there and take a couple of swings. Now, I do want to get some of your thoughts on some of the subpoenas that are coming out. Let's start with the Atlanta, down in Georgia. Evidently, Lindsey Graham has refused. He's going to refuse to cooperate with the subpoena. Any thoughts there? Is that going to matter?
I've always thought, Rick, that of every crime Trump committed, of every crime he committed when it came to the 2020 election, the one that might really get him is what he did in Georgia. When, again, to remind everybody listening to us, the President of the United States called the Secretary of State of Georgia and pressured the Secretary of State of Georgia to overthrow Georgia's election. Find me 11,780 votes. Do it. Mark Meadows was privy to that. Lindsey Graham put pressure on the Georgia Secretary of State. I've always thought that Trump and his people are in trouble on this one.
Yeah. But what I found interesting that came out of the January 6th hearing is, Trump said he won Georgia by 400,000 votes. If you won by 400,000 votes, why didn't you ask for 400,000 votes?
because everything out of his mouth is a lie. Period. Yeah.
But do you think this is going to matter? Do you think these subpoenas are going to amount to anything? Do you think this is going to take it anywhere?
I don't. I still don't believe he'll be indicted. I could be wrong. I think these hearings are having a minuscule impact on his political fortunes with the Republican Party. And Rick, I expect Trump to come out in early August and announce he's running for re-election.
Yeah, I expect him to do the same thing. And do you think that'll help or hurt the Republicans in November?
It probably won't make a difference. I think the Democrats I think their goose is kind of cooked for November, especially when it comes to the House, no matter what. And look, Republicans will probably take back the House, maybe the Senate. And if Trump's already out there as the announced presidential candidate, you know him, he'll take credit for it.
No, of course he will. And I also understand that Pat Cipollone is going to testify before the January 6th committee. Is this going to matter?
Well, it should, because he's the guy who told everybody around Trump that we're breaking. I'll tell you what, we're breaking every law under the book with what we're doing. We can presume that he gave that advice to Trump as well. Now, it will not be a televised deposition. I think it's just going to be. I don't think there'll be cameras. But if he's under oath, Rick, I would think the information he's going to convey will just, again, will make the case that we all know needs to be made, that Trump did what he did.
Yeah, I hope that at some point they make all of the interviews available that they did, because there are a couple of them that I would sit and watch all of them through. The Hirschman interview for certain.
Yeah.
Bill Barr, I would sit and watch that. There are a bunch of them that I would want to see from start to finish. To get all of the context and all of that. I wonder if that'll ever happen.
I don't know if it can. And again, regarding Cipollone this Friday, he's got a specific agreement with these two. I'm sure that with the committee, I'm sure that's part of it. If it can ever, I don't even know if there'll be a camera in there. I think maybe there has to be, but I'm sure they have an agreement as to when and if that can ever be shown.
So on the January 6th committee stuff, you don't think this is having any impact? Clearly not with the Trump base. But do you think this is having any impact? Because I look here in Pennsylvania, we've got a guy running for governor who I think is a Nazi. Benito Mastriano, I call him.
Yeah.
There are a number of Republicans who are coming out and endorsing the Democrats, saying this guy's just too far off to the fringe. Do you see that possibly happening to the Republicans in other places like Greitens or other places, or are they just that far gone?
I don't think the hearings, Rick, are going to have any impact in 22. I do not think there'll be a Republican, maybe even a Democratic voter who's going to vote on what's going on in these hearings. When you look, and I think it was Pew, somebody came out with just the latest of the most important issues to the American people. And Rick, you know what they are: inflation, the price of gas, the economy, all of that. That's front and center. I think these hearings will impact who the presidential nominees are in 24. I think that's where you'll see an impact.
Going to be an interesting time. I guess last question I have: did you have a reasonable holiday weekend? I didn't ask you that at the beginning, and I should have. Did you have a good weekend?
No, you didn't need to ask me at first, because you asked me the most important question about Independence Day, and that was the horrible event that played out in Highland Park, Illinois. That aside, and by the way, Rick, Highland Park is my wife's hometown. She grew up there, real close to the congressional district I represented. All of that aside, I had a nice, relaxing Independence Day. How about you, my friend?
I got to do some work with my son. We had a good weekend together, building the fence. Like I said, it's the kind of stuff that makes me go, maybe there's life outside of all of this.
There is. Hey, Rick Smith,
yes,
you're a damn good American. I mean that.
Thank you. So you too, Joe. I appreciate it, brother. Thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Rick.
Our good friend Joe Walsh. Make sure you check out his podcast, the White Flag with Joe Walsh podcast. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1911. That was the day that the song The Preacher and the Slave first appeared in the Little Red Songbook. The Little Red Songbook was a compilation of labor songs published by the Industrial Workers of the World Union. The booklet was pocket-sized so labor activists could carry it with them wherever they would go. Music was an important part of the IWW labor culture. Joe Hill was probably the most well-known of the IWW songwriters. Many of the songs penned during this era are still sung at labor rallies and meetings today. But not everyone appreciated the music and the message of the IWW, a radical union that called for all workers to unite together. When IWW activists, or wobblies as they were called, would give speeches, they would sometimes be heckled and jeered. Authorities would harass and break up meetings. Sometimes, Salvation Army brass bands that were competing for space and audiences on street corners would disrupt IWW rallies with their music. Joe Hill wrote his song, The Preacher and the Slave, in response to this musical disruption. He set the lyrics to the tune of the hymn In the Sweet By and By. Often, IWW songwriters satirized hymns played by the Salvation Army, which the Wobblies dubbed the Starvation Army. The lyrics tell of long-haired preachers who tell workers to stop agitating because they will eat by and by. The song was a critique of religious leaders who did not help working people. It became one of the most popular Joe Hill tunes.
Long-haired preachers come out every night. They try to tell you what's wrong and what's right.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So crazy abound. I look at Arizona. You got this congresswoman, this Debbie Lesko, who evidently claimed that she'd shoot her own grandchildren. I mean, she's on the floor of the House, giving her little spiel. And, well, here she is.
Arizona is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Representative Jordan. I rise in opposition to H.R. 2377. I have 5 grandchildren. I would do anything to protect my 5 grandchildren, including, as a last resort, shooting them if I had to protect the lives of my grandchildren. Democrat bills that we've heard this week want to take away my right to protect my grandchildren. They want to take away the rights of law-abiding citizens to protect their own children and grandchildren and wives and brothers and sisters. This bill takes away due process from law-abiding citizens. Can you imagine if you had a disgruntled ex or somebody who hates you because of your political views, and they go to a judge and say, oh, this person is dangerous, and that judge would take away your guns, lean on the side of conservatism, take away the guns, without that person even having a knowledge that there was a court hearing that would take away their guns. This is wrong. When Republicans were in the majority, we actually passed legislation that was signed into law that would have prevented mass shootings. These bills would not. We need to join together, Republicans and Democrats. I hope they can do it in the Senate and get something done that actually saves children's lives. And with that, I yield back.
Did I hear her right? She would shoot her own grandchildren to protect them? Could have saved their lives by killing them. Yep, that's what she said. Now, she, obviously people on the social medias went crazy. They had the reaction I'm sure that you had, the reaction that I had. She responded by saying, "It never ceases to amaze me the lengths gun control zealots will go. They turned to my speech about protecting Second Amendment rights and my right to protect my grandchildren from violent criminals into a claim that I would harm my own grandchildren. Absolutely ridiculous. Did you not hear her say that I would shoot my own grandchildren? Did she not hear those words coming out of her mouth?" Now, the other part that I found interesting is she said that when the Republicans were in the majority, and this is the fantasy world that she must live in, because somehow she thinks you can shoot the grandchildren and they'll be okay. There's the other part of this, where what legislation did they pass that was signed into law that protected the children? Where is this? Where is this mythical, where is this stuff? Where is this stuff of which you speak, oh Debbie? Where is this legislation that protected the children in all of the shootings that have happened since that majority you once doth had? Oh, Debbie, where is it? And did you hear in her voice a little bit? She was even like, "Oh man, I think I've gone too crazy here even for me." And yet she is a representative representing thousands of people in Arizona. And I got to wonder, folks of Arizona, good people of Arizona, what is wrong with you? And this is my problem with what's happened to our political system. Characters like Debbie Leskow, Boebert, Green, the rest of them, people who are there for performance sake. No policy initiatives, no ideas, no thoughts, no way of fixing problems, none of that. All just caricatures of human beings. All people who want attention without actually trying to solve problems. And it's going to get worse because the smart people know how to use the dumb. And we've got a bunch of dumb people in Congress. And I've said, look, Trump was bad, but imagine someone who's actually strategically halfway sane. Someone who actually understands how the system works. Someone like Ron DeSantis, who has always concerned me, who now has signed a bill going to require all Florida students and professors to register their political views with the state. You're going to have to declare which party you're with. And I guess what this will be used for is if one school or another has too many of those D kind of folk, they're going to probably lose funding or see tuition increases. You can see this is where we're going. You can see it's where we're going. Because we also found out today that Comey and McCabe, who Donald Trump was not very fond of, both got the most invasive IRS audits possible during the Trump years. Wonder how that happens. It's amazing how the things that Republicans point at Democrats for claiming they were doing, Republicans actually did. It's amazing how that happens. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of our program, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a moment. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours. Make sure you check that out.
So while the Supreme Court case is very important, it's not the only game in town.
Right-wing Supreme Court strikes major blow to EPA's ability to regulate carbon emissions. Residential natural gas stoves leak carcinogens even when turned off, study finds. Plus, clean energy jobs are booming. Fossil fuel jobs are shrinking.
All of those booms and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Getting to a wedding costs an arm and a leg. Gas is so expensive, you can bring it as a wedding gift.
This is your Green News Report.
And make sure you hold on to it, though. Your grandkids can sell it to a warlord for water.
Okay, Desi Doyen, the day that we have long predicted, long feared would come, has now arrived.
As expected, the right-wing supermajority on the stolen and packed U.S. Supreme Court has issued a disturbing landmark ruling in West Virginia versus EPA. That's a lawsuit brought by Republican attorneys general over emission standards that never took effect. The 6-3 majority ruled that despite the Clean Air Act's broad textual mandate, the EPA does not have the authority to regulate carbon dioxide emissions from power plants, because Congress didn't explicitly say regulate carbon emissions. The decision kneecaps the agency at a critical time when scientists warn the window is closing to act to prevent catastrophic climate impacts. It throws a wrench into new standards being developed by the Biden administration. However, in an interview with Sky News before the ruling, EPA Chief Michael Regan said the agency has other tools.
The president has a number of tools in his toolbox. And as we look at all of the regulations that govern power plants, we have regulations that look at traditional air pollutants, water pollutants, and coal ash or, hazardous waste cleanup. So while the Supreme Court case is very important, it's not the only game in town.
Well, good luck with those other tools. Given what the Supreme Court has decided, it's clear to me, at least, that they are also going to handcuff the agency on those other rules as well.
Yes, the ruling is the pinnacle of Republicans and their funders' decades-long corrupt coordinated scheme to stack the court and handcuff the EPA from issuing future climate and pollution regulations. And it can also be used to gut the government's ability to regulate corporate behavior in other sectors.
There is a reason I don't call these right-wingers conservative. They aren't conservative at all. They are radicals.
And it matters because climate research shows that man-made global warming has now escalated the risk of compound disasters that interact with self-reinforcing feedbacks. A new study has found that extreme dryness in the U.S. West's man-made megadrought boosted hot temperatures by 4 degrees last summer, intensifying both heat waves and wildfires, with greater cascading impacts together than each disaster on its own.
So it's all getting terrible all at once.
A different study finds that most U.S. cities are seeing more extremely hot days overall than in the past because of global warming. More than half of U.S. cities now see at least 7 more extremely hot days than in the 1970s, with the hottest summer temperatures arriving much earlier and persisting later into the fall. In other news, new scientific research shows that residential natural gas stoves leak carcinogens, including benzene and 20 other toxic air pollutants that are linked to birth defects and cancers, and they do it even when turned off.
So that is the clean natural gas we hear so much about?
So-called.
Nice.
This is the first study to document additional pollutants included in the natural gas that's piped into homes, part of a growing body of research identifying natural gas as a significant source of indoor pollution.
Electrify, please.
But some good news. In Oklahoma's Republican Senate primary this week, Trump's wildly corrupt, scandal-plagued first EPA director, Scott Pruitt, lost his bid for the U.S. Senate to replace retiring climate science denier Senator James Inhofe. And he lost badly.
So there's that, at least.
And finally, jobs in the U.S. renewable energy sector rose faster than overall U.S. employment in 2021, and it made up for job losses in the fossil fuel industry, even as fossil fuel production increased. The Department of Energy's annual jobs report out this week detailed dramatic growth across the entire clean energy sector in 2021 and found that the fossil fuel extraction industry lost more than 31,000 jobs, while the electric vehicle sector alone created 45,000 jobs, a stunning 25% increase over the previous year.
So there's that as well. We'll take what we can get. Thank you very much. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we could not get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the group MoveOn.org, they've got a petition out looking to impeach Justice Clarence Thomas. They've got 1.1 million signatures already. They're trying to get to 1.2 million. That's probably going to happen very soon. And look, the reality is people not happy with the Supreme Court at this point because, look, this is radical change. This is enormous change. This is not what the American people at all are thrilled with. In fact, the polling out, 57% disapprove of the Supreme Court's decision in Roe. 43% strongly disapprove. 41% approve. 25% strongly approve. This isn't one of those things where we're split down the middle when 57% say, no, this isn't. And it's going to get, I think it's going to go further the other way where people are going to disapprove the more the stories come out. Because I think a lot of people are like, well, there's, because I think the narrative has been spun, well, people are using it because they're irresponsible. When you start finding out that there are a whole bunch of other things that go into play here, oh boy, I think are you going to see the numbers change. When the first family comes out and says, hey, my daughter died because of this, when the first wave of women dying because of this start hitting the media, I think that 57% number is going to go up and quickly. And then I think you're going to be left with about 35, 36%, which are going to be the hardcore right-wing, the zealot class of this country. The Sharia law folks, the right-wing zealots, the Trump base, for instance. They're going to be the ones okay with it. The Mike Kelly base. Because there have been a couple of interesting hot Mike things that have happened here. One of them being with this Mike Kelly representative here from Pennsylvania, who, again, one of these people talking about, hey, a federal abortion ban, ensuring that nowhere can anyone go, criminalize providers, start locking people up, all of this stuff. And the thing is I've had conversations with people recently who were like, well, I was surprised, I was shocked. And I'm going, I don't know how you were surprised that the Supreme Court went this way. Especially if you understand how the justices were chosen in the Federalist Society and all of in C Street and all of the moneyed interests and all of the groups that are aligned with these right-wing organizations that have pushed this agenda. It's all this Christian fundamentalism. It's all of this guy named Jeff Charlotte wrote a really interesting book on C Street. I think it was called The Family. We had him on the program a couple of years ago. And it's one of those things where these are people who believe that their destiny is to be great, that they are chosen by God. The rest of us, we're just all peons and we're all just pawns on the chessboard to be used around and discarded at whenever. But they're special. And they hone the special. Those people on the Supreme Court, they've been groomed. They've been taken from a very early age, and they've been moved along and shaped and molded, and they're going to do what they're put there to do. There's no independent thought here. These aren't independent jurists. These are people who have been well groomed. There isn't a thought in their head that hasn't been programmed into there by these groups. They don't want another Justice Breyer. They don't want another, that went too far. They want to know who they're getting, which is why, they come down lock, stock, and barrel on the side of corporate America. Why they come down lock, stock, and barrel on the side of evangelical issues. So are we surprised when we find out that one of the activists, one of these right-wing evangelical groups, bragged on tape that she was praying with Supreme Court justices that the majority cited her, one of their legal briefs in? Are we surprised that they're all part of this incestuous pool? No, we're not. Not even a little bit. Are we surprised that they go to the same functions and they're fed from the same troughs? No. We've known this for years. Now, the thing that's bothering to me is that we're going to, and this is the really scary part of this. Republicans want to force 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds to have children, because maybe they got pregnant through, rape or incest or whatever. They're going to force that 10, 12, 13-year-old to have children. Even though right now, as someone pointed out to me, well, they can't support themselves. They can't get jobs. And I'm going, no, they got a solution for that. The solution is tear down those child labor laws. Put those kids back to work. Because education is wasted on a good majority of children, they believe. We need good, cheap labor. I mean, you go back to Newt Gingrich a number of years ago when he was running for president, saying that, the kids should be cleaning the bathrooms. We should fire all the janitors and put the kids to work cleaning the bathrooms. Get rid of those union janitors and, they're not getting an education anyway. Put them back to work. Because this is the world that they want. They want this Dickinsonian world of you have the elites, the chosen, the special, them, and then the rest of us, the desperate, the struggling, the needy, that they can use and abuse and discard at will. This is the world that they're moving us towards. You can't come up to another conclusion other than that. When you look at the kind of policies that they've proposed over the years, when you looked at the agenda that they've moved forward on, it just doesn't work any other way. But we're in this spot where, again, they're using these, and religion, it being part of being central to what they use to divide us. This idea, the Christian warrior, this idea of a prosperity gospel, this idea of a greedy Jesus with a gun is mind-blowing to me. But this is where they take us. Every day I get emails from folks who want to pitch guests and, hey, have this guy on to talk about, this and that. Today I was inundated with people saying that the reason the mass shootings are happening are because we've devalued life because of abortion. I'm going, I disagree completely. Because the world that you want to take us back to completely devalues life. I've read labor's history. I've studied what happened to 8-year-old children in the mines. This is the world that they want to return us to. And you go, no, Rick, come on. No, seriously. The policies that they want to move back to are going to take us back to the Lochner era, where there are no laws that government can pass to protect workers from anything, citing liberty of contract or freedom of contract, however you want to frame it today. That if you're hungry enough, desperate enough to work for poverty wages in deplorable conditions. It's your right. It's your freedom. It's your liberty. They tell us this all the time. This is what the gig economy is. They have no responsibility to you or to society or anyone. All they have a responsibility to is to their shareholders, is to their wealth, is to their bottom line, is to the profit. And everything else that they talk about is just window dressing. It's just PR. It's just spin. And this upcoming election, this is an important one because it could be the last one that really matters. And I hate sounding hyperbolic, but the reality is when this Supreme Court gets a hold of the next term and that case in North Carolina where they decide, hey, you know what, maybe if a state doesn't like the outcome of the votes, they can let their General Assembly, their House of Representatives in the state change that and send their own chosen electors to Washington. Basically doing what Trump wanted to do, making his treason, his sedition, making that coup attempt the future legal. That should frighten you. Now, I know my Trump supporter friends go, that's what we should do because the election was stolen. All those people did voted. Yeah, that's what elections are. But we're in this spot where they're putting people in positions of desperation deliberately so that they can profit off of it. And then they're blaming the victims in this. I mean, these shootings are just it's a perfect example of this. There's a link between abortion and shootings. Yeah, look, it's like anything. If you look for it hard enough, you're going to find it. As I've said on the abortion issue a bunch of times, if you're against it, don't have one. But if you want to limit them, the best way to do that is give people a reason to have children, to want to bring children to this world. Healthcare, education, good jobs, opportunities, stability. Desperation, poverty, and hunger are not reasons to bring children into this world. Because I said so is not a good reason to make women have children. But that's where our Republican Party, that's where they're taking us. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1892. At 3 a.m., an alarm sounded in the town of Homestead, Pennsylvania. The steelworkers who lived in the town were on strike. Andrew Carnegie was the owner of the mill, located just outside of Pittsburgh. The Carnegie Steel Company was making massive profits, a record $4.5 million just before the 1892 confrontation. Even so, Andrew Carnegie was determined to lower the cost of production by breaking the union. As the union's 3-year contract was coming to an end in 1892, the company demanded drastic wage cuts. During the contract negotiations, management didn't make proposals to negotiate, instead issued ultimatums to the union. The local newspaper pointed out that it was not so much a question of disagreement as to wages, but a design upon labor organization. The manager of the mill, Henry Clay Frick, tried to bring in the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, which was known for infiltrating unions and breaking strikes. The workers were determined not to let the Pinkertons into the mill. For 14 hours, the workers battled with the Pinkertons and attempted to sink their barge. At the end of the battle, 9 workers and 3 Pinkertons lay dead. 4 days later, 8,500 National Guard forces were sent at Frick's request to take control of the town and steel mill. After winning his victories, Frick announced, "Under no circumstances will we have any further dealings with the Amalgamated Association as an organization. This is final." This incident is worth remembering because today, many people are intent on crushing any attempts by workers to organize.
I was born in the cold fields of Kentucky. I moved north in 73.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like Chuck Schumer is going to be moving forward on the budget reconciliation. What's being dubbed, I guess, as Build Back Mansion. It's, I guess, the skinny Build Back Better is what they're also calling it. I'm hoping the tax proposal, I'm hoping there'll be some tax the rich proposal in here as well. Something we desperately need to be doing. But there's some talk in here on the prescription drug price front of capping out-of-pocket expenses, doing some of the things that need to get done on that. The 2 major issues, climate and energy, there's some stuff there. Going to help Medicare negotiate, like I said, for prescription drug prices. That could help, but that's not going to happen until 2023. So, hey, Big Pharma going to be able to cash in at least for another year. But it does look like it might get something done. So Democrats need a win so they can say, hey, we're trying to do something to lower costs, because these are things that should have been done, I don't know, last year. Just a thought. And strategically, arguably this was a mistake on the part of the administration. Should have taken what you could have gotten. If Manchin was, this is all you could have gotten, get it funded, start moving it, and then demand more. On the Obamacare front, not sure what's going to happen with the funding for that. So premiums at the end of the year could rise on that front. So look, at the end of this, Republicans are doing what they're doing what they can to make sure that, hey, the tools that Biden has to address inflation, to address the costs, going to be an uphill battle, because Democrats still have to deal with Manchin and Sinema. And Sinema is not going to allow tax increases to happen, which have to at some point. Got to have that happen, especially for those folks in the upper strata, which is how you then pay for things at the lower end. And I know, but Rick, that's redistribution of wealth. Yeah, I've said before, I'm not opposed to it. I would like the wealth to be redistributed the way it was when my grandparents were around, when you had a massive middle class of prosperous workers. Giant. When 70% of the workers were making living wages, because 35% of them were in unions, earning good wages with good health care and good retirement. Yeah, let's do that. And I think Biden's speech today was part of that. I think you need to have an administration that's not afraid to talk like he did today. And he needs to do more of it. He should give that speech every day. That is a speech that people need to hear every single day. He needs to hammer on the fact that Rick Scott wants to destroy every federal program every 5 years and hope and pray that the Republicans are benevolent enough to reenact them. So Granny, your Medicare, maybe in 5 years it'll be back again. Maybe not. Maybe you're going to have to go into the private market and figure out how that old hip's going to do in the private market. This is the world that conservatism wants to take us to. This is the world that they want us to go to. And they're telling us, this is the part that's important. They're honest. Say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to destroy everything. We're going to tear it all down. We're going to burn it down. Hand us the lighter fluid, please. This is basically what they're saying. It's like when me and the kids have a cookout. The last thing my wife wants me to have is the lighter fluid. Because I like seeing flames go 15 feet in the air. This is what the Republicans are saying they're going to do. They're going to set what's left of our social safety net ablaze, and it's going to be 15 feet in the air. And they're going to dance around the fire. Because they never wanted these programs to begin with. They never wanted a social safety net. They want a desperate working class. Understand that. They've always wanted that. And as much as they're trying to pivot right now, and they are, you give them credit, they understand that the Democrats are weak on working issues because they haven't done enough. What have Republicans done? We got tax cuts. Did you? Really? And are you still getting them? Oh no, you didn't. They sunset. Yeah. Love that. But those corporate tax cuts, those stay on forever. Wonder who was important there. This is one of those moments where it's a which side are you on moment. That old labor frame. Which side are you on? You on the side of the moneyed interest and the power and the elite, or are you on the side of the person who's working for a living? Because here's the reality. This is one of those important moments where we're always stuck in the right-left frame. This is not right or left. This is up-down. This is the wealthy using the political system to divide us. Look, I wish the Republican Party were functional. I wish, as Joe Walsh said earlier, I wish that they weren't a bunch of nihilists ready to destroy this country and want to harm their neighbors. I wish they weren't. I wish they had real policy initiatives that were really going to help working class people so we could have an honest debate on, well, is your way better or is this way better to get us where we want to go? We're not having that discussion. We're having a discussion of one party, the Democrats, going, hey, this is where we want to take you. This is the economy we want to build. This is the vision we have. And a Republican Party going, I've got lighter fluid. Let's burn it down. Let's burn it down because those people won't get any. Now, granted, you won't get anything either. But those people over there, they're going to get nothing. Won't that make you happy? And far too many people are going, yep, that'll make me happy. We got work to do in getting out of this mindset of the right-left. And understand, it's the power elites. This really is a Wall Street, Main Street situation. This really is top-down. And we've got to focus on that. On every issue. I don't care what that issue is. It's the power dynamics. It's the power that keeps us divided. And the weird thing is we got a president right now who's talking about how to give power back to working people. How to shift that power dynamic, which is why the moneyed interests are losing their freaking mind. Because, well, they fear a world in which workers have power. They fear a world in which people are demanding better wages, hours, conditions, respect, dignity. They fear that world because they've had it so good for so long. And things are changing. Because people who have never organized in the past, baristas at Starbucks, workers at the Apple store, people who have never organized before are finally the most militant because they've been the most abused. They've been the most taken advantage of. It's about time they stood up and said no more. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you've got any questions, comments, make sure you email me. If you missed any portion of the program, make sure you download the podcast. Never missed a second. Always there, always available. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith. and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1911. That was the day that the song The Preacher and the Slave first appeared in the Little Red Songbook. The Little Red Songbook was a compilation of labor songs published by the Industrial Workers of the World Union. The booklet was pocket-sized so labor activists could carry it with them wherever they would go. Music was an important part of the IWW labor culture. Joe Hill was probably the most well-known of the IWW songwriters. Many of the songs penned during this era are still sung at labor rallies and meetings today. But not everyone appreciated the music and the message of the IWW, a radical union that called for all workers to unite together. When IWW activists, or wobblies as they were called, would give speeches, they would sometimes be heckled and jeered. Authorities would harass and break up meetings. Sometimes, Salvation Army brass bands that were competing for space and audiences on street corners would disrupt IWW rallies with their music. Joe Hill wrote his song, The Preacher and the Slave, in response to this musical disruption. He set the lyrics to the tune of the hymn In the Sweet By and By. Often, IWW songwriters satirized hymns played by the Salvation Army, which the Wobblies dubbed the Starvation Army. The lyrics tell of long-haired preachers who tell workers to stop agitating because they will eat by and by. The song was a critique of religious leaders who did not help working people. It became one of the most popular Joe Hill tunes.
Long-haired preachers come out every night. They try to tell you what's wrong and what's right.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
It's a serious handicap for an elected leader to be a lame duck. Far worse, though, if the leader is just plain lame. Poor Joe Biden has tumbled into both ditches. He set himself up for lame duckism in the 2020 race by promising voters that he would merely be, quote, a bridge, not anything else. He portrayed himself as a bipartisan inside player, an interim senior statesman who would calmly pilot the ship of state from Trump's bombast to whomever was next. But just a year and a half into his presidency, the duckism has kicked in, and he's scrambling to insist that he's still the president, now planning to run again in 2024. But that only highlights Biden's inherent lameness. He's playing president rather than being one. Take his embarrassingly meek response to the Supreme Court's 6 partisan extremists who just nullified the fundamental freedom of all women in America to control their own bodies. Biden called the court's dictate terrible. But what did he do? His first, quote, action was to send out a fundraising mailing asking for $15 donations to re-elect Democrats. Then he flew off on a 4-day trip abroad. Roundly condemned for being AWOL, he belatedly held a press conference in Spain, calling the court's attack on women, quote, destabilizing. Gosh, Joe, so harsh. Then he called on Congress to do something. But wait, aren't you the president? Shouldn't you at least be here, show up on the front lines, and treat this as the democracy emergency it is? Hello, 6 besotted judicial right-wingers who think their black robes make them little gods have just sanctimoniously usurped an innate human right. This is Jim Hightower saying, the 70% of Americans who oppose the ungodly arrogance of these 6 judges need a real president, one who will fight like hell to restore this right. And the question they have is, where is Joe?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like the decision on the tariffs could be coming any day now, as the president is still deciding on if they're going to do away with the Trump-era tariffs, which, again, I am opposed to. I've had a bunch of people emailing me saying, you know, on one side, hey, we got to get rid of it because inflation. You know, inflation's too high. Joe Biden's got to do something, and lowering the tariffs, that's going to help us buy cheap crap from China cheaper. No, it won't. And on the other side going, if Joe Biden really cared about the working class, he'd keep these tariffs, and it'd be okay. How would you like to be Joe? That's why I didn't sign up for the job. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, let's start with the tariffs today. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman Bob Ney, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So let's start there with the tariff talk. Thoughts on what we do with this? I mean, it's a tough spot Biden's in. On one hand, we got to do something on inflation. Gas prices are high. He's done a little bit. They've come down a touch. I don't see anybody saying Joe Biden did that. But what are your thoughts?
Well, let me go to the political side first instead of the substance side. How about that? There's no doubt in my mind that Hillary Clinton, and people will argue this with me, but she lost the election to Trump due to tariffs, due to China, due to free trade agreements. She lost it. She lost Pennsylvania, which she should never have lost. Up in Wisconsin, we know the fire drill there. Bernie Sanders was the same as Donald Trump on tariffs, and I always argue he would have won those states, but that's past history. I guess I'm always told I'm nuts on that one. But when it comes to the politics of the situation, I think the president's got to be very, very, very careful, because the fact remains that he, could be perceived and viewed and lose a lot of people in the base as weak on China, but more importantly, not, standing up for the jobs. That's where that will, bear down on. Now, on the other hand, on substance, the other problem he has is this. You're not going to see, at least everything that I've looked at on this issue over the years, everything I've, learned on this issue being in Congress, you're not going to see an immediate drop whatsoever in inflationary prices. In fact, the problem we might have, because we love to buy, don't we?
Yep.
And the problem we might have, Rick, is that people then will, okay, it's cheaper, and I can actually maybe even buy more. I mean, there's a lot of problems with this type of approach. So I don't think. I know it's one of the tools that he can use to address inflation. I fully understand that, but I'm just thinking that in the end here, they're not just going to full scale remove tariffs. I just don't think he'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, the first story I saw on this, because I looked up Biden tariffs, and I saw, the beer manufacturers, the CEO of the beer companies, Molson and Anheuser-Busch and Heineken USA saying, you got to lower those tariffs, Joe, because the aluminum tariffs, they're just so onerous. They're adding a fraction of a penny to every six-pack, and boy, Joe Sixpack can't afford that fraction of a penny to ensure that we get domestically made aluminum here. No. This is my problem here, because as soon as this piling on of, we can get cheaper beer. Yeah, cheaper beer. Yeah. It's not going to lower the cost of a six-pack anything anywhere near significant enough to notice in anybody's budget.
And that was my point on the substance of the issue. And let me throw out Lucent Technologies. And if some people haven't heard of Lucent, that's because it stopped existing in 2006.
Yep.
Lucent Technologies came into my office and put a full court press. They said, I remember their words, Bob, just think, permanent trade agreement with China. Just think what we can do now. We're going to be able to sell one phone to half of the Chinese, and those jobs are coming back to America. Well, Lucent Technologies obviously was pulling fire alarms, and there was companies like that were coming in to us, and multinational companies, and they said that this was going to be the great salvation for them, and it frankly just wasn't.
No. In fact, I actually knew a guy. Since you brought up Lucent, he, I used to see him every day, because I used to stop at a certain place every day to take my break, and he'd be in there getting his coffee and stuff before he went into Lucent. He had the world by the short hairs. Had a really good, high-paying job. Had the big Cadillac, had the big boat. He had the world by the short hairs, and telling me how wonderful it was. He had his 401k with hundreds of thousands of dollars in it, because at the time Lucent was trading at $100 a share plus. I'm sure you remember that. And I then saw him months later, disheveled, just Turned out he lost his job. He had to pack up his workstation, had to pack it up and ship it to China after training his replacement so he could get his severance package. All his 401k money was gone because the shares went down to like almost junk status. I mean, it was a horrible thing that happened to these workers, and it was all because of just what you were talking about. They invested so heavily in that we're going to go to that market, and that whole thing just tanked. And it was terrible for American workers. It was terrible for the country, but for those individual workers in New Jersey, it was just absolutely horrible.
And here's the corporate greed factor that we can throw in here with Lucian and oil companies and on and on and on. Even if the president does something with the tariffs, and even if we could prove that it goes through the system to reduce prices, let's say like the beer, or whatever product, it won't be passed on.
Right.
For the most part. I mean, I can safely say it won't be passed on. So then what happens? What was achieved? So I think this is a really, really tricky thing for the White House, and I think it's something that they should avoid, obviously, doing.
Yeah, I think it's just a bad idea all the way around. There are other ways of doing this. I'm not sure how, but this ain't it. Maybe the Gavin Newsom way. They gave out gas cards. Which did you notice that they're giving out gas money?
Right.
That was his official "I'm running for president" announcement, I do believe. Let's get to your state, because look, I grew up in Ohio. I was born and raised there.
Right.
What the hell is going on? What's wrong with Ohio? Evidently, the Ohio ballot board has a unanimously approved language, according to 10 TV, that's going to allow for a ballot measure to go on the ballot to outlaw vaccine mandates. When did Ohio become the dumbest state in the union?
Wow, that is, I'm here in Ohio, and I just looking at this. The House passed something back in I think it was January, and I don't. And the Senate was I'll tell you who rejected it. I can remember the Attorney General of Ohio rejected it at the time.
Right.
So what they've done now, in order to advance it, then some of the political people that support this have advanced this effort to put it into language, and that would be on the general election ballot, and so it'll be in the voters' hands. Now, we would be, I think, the only state in the nation to have a specific ban of vaccine mandates in the Constitution. Of course, you know what this would mean, Rick. I mean, this would be a big step backwards.
Oh, this would be an enormous step backwards. This means that, hey, we're going to make polio great, Bob.
Right.
It means any idiot who sees a YouTube video or any ridiculous piece of propaganda can go, nope, I'm not getting my kids vaccinated, and which will then the rest of society will then, wow, I mean, we're going to make polio great again. That's it. And the group, I guess, pushing it, they claim to be a nonpartisan, which is odd. They're nonpartisan. Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom, evidently run by a woman who is a certified medical assistant. This is one of those moments where, look, I'm not gonna degrade someone's level of education, but there's an entire field of academia dedicated to this, and then there's the person who's the medical assistant at the nursing home or at the doctor's office. I'm hoping the good voters of Ohio go, this is ridiculous. I'm hoping. Any thoughts?
Well, it's a medical right to refuse group, and then the Advocates for Medical Freedom that you mentioned are the anti-vaccine group, and they've got a guy that organized it, and Dr. Worming. He's a proctologist, and
of course he is.
He's trying to do his efforts on the people of Ohio, and he's a proctologist, and he is steering the head of this thing. And it would be two-part. It's not COVID alone, but it would be an individual's right to refuse any medical procedure, anything, and it would be absolute. And the language goes in further even to say that no law or regulation, which would mean an emergency order by the governor. For example, what the governor would have to do, let's say in a medical emergency for the state, even that can't apply to this.
Now, how would
this is pretty far-reaching.
Now, now how would it work? Because now, again, you're talking about putting something into the Constitution that you're having the right to do something would then infringe on other people's rights. How would that work? Would this, if it passed, would this automatically go into the Constitution, or would this could this be something that could be taken before your state Supreme Court?
Well, it could be argued at the court, but if you have a ballot initiative and it passes, and it's happened in the past, it has to usually then be, I don't want to say ratified, the state legislature has to come back to enact.
Oh, there's no question they will.
Right. And there's where in the past we've had problems. For example, casinos could never pass. Finally, casinos passed at the ballot. It came back to state legislature, and then there was this, wrangling over and over about what law would specifically be applied to it. So that would happen in this case. And but this amendment would conflict with a lot of practices that we have in the state of Ohio. Let me give you a great example, and I'm pretty safe in saying this, I think. Judges order completions of substance abuse disorder treatments. They do it. We have drug courts in Ohio. I don't know if you have those in Pennsylvania. So what they do is they have a completion of substance abuse, like Suboxone, if you've got a heroin addiction, opiate addiction. And additionally, Ohio law allows certain professionals to pink slip a person if they have reason to believe that they're going to hurt themselves. Well, guess what? You're not going to do that. You're not going to have the Suboxone, for example, if you want to help them. Obviously, they could refuse that even if they're in a treatment center. So this is really going to have a lot of backlash that is really going to be bad for the state.
It's like a lot of this reactionary stuff where you have these groups that that do a lot of damage. Come up with these brilliant ideas that they didn't really think out. I mean, it's like a lot of this. They didn't game this out. And one of my big rules is always, before you go changing things, before you pursue policy or whatever, make sure that what you're doing is not going to make things worse. Make sure that the outcomes that you're pursuing aren't going to be worse than what you've got. And I look at, this overturning Roe. The situation down the road, it looks incredibly worse, and is going to just be chaotic and a mess. And there's part of me think that that's what they wanted, but this is one of those scenarios for me.
And what this did, the House passed the legislation, like I said, I think it was in January, that would ban almost all of the vaccine mandates in Ohio, and even the state Senate wouldn't take up the proposal. And that's why the political people that want this have went to the ballot board to bypass the state Senate. Now, hopefully this doesn't pass. Hopefully, if it passes, then the state Senate will be the voice of reason to, not enact this in particular so that it hurts the public good. Because look, if you ban, this measure would ban mandates, ban them. So you don't want to get a tuberculosis shot and work at the Y camp, but don't worry about it. You don't have to do that.
Wow. This will be most certainly something to look forward to next year, because I guess the earliest this can get on the ballot is the 2023 election. So, hey, something to look down the road for.
We'll see.
If we have elections then.
or fair and free, right?
Yeah. No, that's the other part of it. And speaking on that line, there's some. I got a little bit of good feeling today. Now, look, our Supreme Court's going to take that case from North Carolina that's going to maybe possibly put, some of the power back in the hands of the legislatures to decide who our presidents are going to be. But I look here in Pennsylvania, We've got our Nazi running for governor on the Republican side, Doug Mastriano. And it looks like a lot of Republican, heavyweight names are actually endorsing the Democrat because they're saying, the Mastriano character way off the deep end. Maybe the Republicans have gone even too far for themselves. Thoughts?
Well, this is a really interesting case, because we're looking at this, compiling some stories the other day. You've got 9 Pennsylvania GOP leaders. As you said, the Republicans, the leaders, they're backing Shapiro.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing to see that type of thing. They've endorsed Shapiro. 9 Republican leaders. Now that tells you something when 9 of the leaders go against him, and it tells you that like you say, even for them, he's out of control.
Yeah, you had a former congressman, Charlie Dent. You had a former Speaker of the House, and Denny O'Brien. You had a former, Montgomery County Republican Party Chair, Ken Davis. You had a, former state Supreme Court justice. You a bunch of these are real former lieutenant governor. You had a bunch of names coming forward saying a bit too far. And I got to wonder if that's going to carry some weight with the party as a whole, or if the machinery is just so far to the extreme that maybe it's not going to matter and they're going to be irrelevant. But at least this is a little bit of a positive sign that maybe there's a little soul left in the party. Because look, I think you have to have a vibrant Republican Party. You got to have at least two parties, with ideas and some bit of sanity who want to move the country forward. At least that's my thought.
Right, and in the case of the former state Supreme Court Justice Sandra, I think it's Newman Greenwood, and what she said is fascinating, because not only did she say, I proudly voted for every Republican candidate, she says, for governor throughout her life, but then she turns around and says she can't vote for somebody as dangerous as Mastriano.
Yep.
As dangerous. And when you start to hear people say things like that, you've got to think, wow, what is this, all about? So I do think it'll have an effect, because there's enough of the Republicans, and I think some of it will, also catch on. And also, Mastriano will not be able to help himself. He's not. He will get more outrageous.
Nope, he's got to. That's his shtick.
Pennsylvania is not that type of state to go, crazy wild. Frankly, in either direction.
Not all of it, but a good portion of it, Bob. A good portion. The portion that I live in.
Well, yeah, right.
They're ready here. The signs are up. We'll put it that way. What's that guy? Was it Bill Engvall? Here's your sign. They got their signs.
There you go.
There it is. But Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Our good friend, former Ohio Congressman Bob Ney. Going to take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to finish today up with an email from Janice, who asked the question, says, I've been seeing numerous companies offering women a lifeline in states where abortions are going to be banned. What are your thoughts of these companies, and what is the purpose of them doing this publicly. And you go, this is one of those interesting moments where you go, are they just good being good corporate citizens? Are they being good to their workers? Is this something that they really care about women? Is this a stand? Is this? And there's a lot of positions you go, yeah, this is companies that care about the values of their workers. This is, care about democracy, care about all kinds of stuff, and that's the PR spin they want you to take. That these are companies that care, and that they care about their employees, and they're going to give women options, and it's all about them. And then once you get off of that kind of high of, oh my gosh, they care, and you take just not even a full step back, kind of like a half step, just a little bit back, you realize that none of these companies really care. It's about PR. It's about getting attention. It's about spin. It's about it's the public relations game. Because here's the thing: if they truly cared about women, really, if they truly cared about families, if they truly did, they would pay living wages. They would pay health care. They would have retirement security. They would have maternity leave, family leave, so that people could welcome children into the world, and do it in a way that wouldn't be a financial burden. That they would have work schedules that would be helppful for families and conducive to raising families and bringing children into the world. So my mindset goes like this, and this is one of those cynical moments, but I'm gonna bet I'm right. They don't want people to take off work for maternity leave. They don't want women getting out of the workforce. So getting a woman an abortion, sending away for a couple of days, paying the travel expenses, a whole lot cheaper than paying for the entire gestation period, all of the health care that goes into it, the birthing process, of all of the money that goes into that, and then finding a replacement, because you're going to get the 12 weeks of unpaid family leave. They do have to pay the medical costs for that time period. But I'm looking at it purely from a bean counter standpoint, and I'm not going to give these companies, I'm not going to give them the attention that they seek. I'm not going to say, oh my God, they're so wonderful. And I haven't. I said, okay, they've said this. I'm always leery of corporate America when they come out and they do something that is perceived as human or decent or right. This is one of those moments. I don't view these companies in that kind of way. That it's not what they're in business for. They're not in business to make your life easier. They're not in business to be good to you. They're in business to make a profit. You're a tool. How can they get the most out of you is how they look at you, and all of us. So for me, that's kind of how I see this. I see this in that light, that this is the cheapest option. This is the dismal science at work going, yes, it's cheaper to send women off, pay the airfare, pay the abortive costs, and get them back to work on Monday and in their desk and doing their job, and don't have to worry about leaving at a certain time because they got kids, and don't have to worry about daycare, and don't have to worry about all of that other stuff that comes with raising a family. And demanding higher wages and taking days off because kids are sick, and there's a lot. So from a corporate standpoint, women not having children is the best thing for the bottom line. So my view, I am not, sorry Janice, I'm not going to give them the pat on the back, the attaboy. I'm not going to give them that. And I also think if it does take hold, it will be something that they will hold over women and male workers as well, as a bargaining tool to be able to line their pockets even further. So again, no, I'm not gonna go with the attaboy. But this is one of those moments where we should be, again, organized labor should be getting into this, putting this stuff in contracts, making sure that it's in writing, making sure that there are conditions and guardrails, and that you get the best deal you can get out of it while they're being good corporate citizens. Make sure that it's written down. So when they get their PR fix, at least they're held to something. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, podcast, wherever you get yours, you'll find ours. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.